1, 2, 3. Yo, salam guys. Welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Banter podcast. I'm your host, Matthew, along here with my co-host, Hussein.
Yes, sir.
Without any further ado, before we get into the topic at hand, we have a couple of topics in mind, very important topics to us. Before we get into all that, Hussein, please start us off with shouting out the wonderful patrons.
As usual, shout out to our patrons. Thank you guys so much. You are the reason that we can buy new equipment when we need and continue making this a high quality podcast. So shout out Asad, Ali, Ahmed, Latifa, Ali again, T-Jam, Justin, and Muhammad. Thank you guys so much for donating monthly. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir. And the patrons are the best. Now, moving forward from that, before we really get into this episode is mainly us reacting to a couple of tweets from scholars in our community, like in our Muslim internet community. We just want to preference this by saying that we're in a difficult position here because we want to talk about something because, one, it's the fact of the matter is it's trending. You know, it's something that's happening around us, so it's natural to talk about things that are occurring around us. But at the same time, we're not trying to be clout chasers. We're not trying to use someone's name and downfall to bring something to ourselves, especially if that person is Muslim and on top of that, like a scholar. But we do believe that if someone shares their opinions on a public forum like Twitter, then they deserve to also get people's response to them. And no one is above criticism, especially when you use Twitter as the way to share your opinions.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean we respect these people less. It doesn't mean that we don't like these people. But if they're allowed to use Twitter to give their takes, then we're allowed to use Twitter to give our takes back to them. And
or YouTube.
On YouTube in general, right?
Like media
in general. But I know this is boring, but this is important for us to say because like this is a Muslim podcast, and we do want to keep adab, and like I don't want to be that person that says something online about someone and then I'm not able to shake the man's hand in person.
And be in their face, yeah.
You know, so this is said without any malice, and inshallah you guys enjoy.
It's without malice, but I might get a little heated, but
but you know, like this is just like we're trying to have like an adult conversation here.
Yeah.
And we just encourage you to, inshallah, you know, we're not big enough to even say this, but I'm just going to say because I'm putting big things out there. Inshallah, we do get big. If you're listening to this and you disagree with us, please listen to the whole point we're trying to make. And again, just let's not take any of this conversation out of context, or just take our word. Like our intentions are good. If they weren't good, I put this person's name on the thumbnail, their face on the thumbnail, and I roast them. We're not doing that. So we're just trying to have a real conversation.
Yeah. So just to get everyone, I guess, give everyone some context. I'm not going to say this person's name. If you know about it, you know about it. If you don't, you don't. So we're not going to go through any like efforts to necessarily hide their identity, but we won't be saying their names or referencing them by name on this podcast. So just to give you some context, today we're reacting to a tweet that someone put out, and in this tweet, it was a very inflammatory tweet, and I think it was made that way on purpose, similar to the other Twitter fingers video we made. I think that this post was purposely inflammatory. I'm not sure exactly if they thought that would make it a better point or that would make more people see it. I don't know exactly how the cost benefit analysis was done. I'm not in the person's head. I'm not going to assume anything. But what I will tell you is I'll just read the tweet and then you guys can think what you want and then we'll react to it. We'll give our opinions about it. So the tweet says, many women today are in perpetual conflict with the men in their lives because they've been taught to be like men, dominant, aggressive, and in charge. The reality is that these traits don't work well as a wife. As a wife, it's your femininity that's gold. It's Allah's gift to you. So, there's
a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack there. You go first.
I think they're tired of hearing me talk. I want to hear your take.
Okay. So, my main issue with this. Okay, my wife is always talking to me, and she's like, "Oh my God, why are you such a hater?" She's like, "Why are you such a hater?" She's like, "Any Shia Muslim influencer, you're like a hater of." And my response to that is that I don't hate that person, obviously. I just dislike some of those people's content, because when you're publicly representing Shia Islam, you have a responsibility. There is a responsibility you have, and I told Zunair this when he was on our podcast. Remember,
great example. You told him to his face, like, "Hey,
exactly.
I thought you were goofy earlier. I was cringed out.
Yeah,
and now I like you."
and there's been a clear shift in his content.
Yeah.
Right. It's far less of what it was before.
Yeah.
So this is not like some unreasonable standard or like inconsistent standard that I'm applying. I think I'm applying it more in this case because it was someone very learned who actually posted this. Number one, that's like, you have to keep that into account. When you're learned scholar on a public platform, you have an even higher responsibility than someone like Zunair would have, or a Shia Muslim TikToker would have, to make sure that you're representing yourself in the proper way. So let me just put that out there, number one. Number two, I say represent yourself in the proper way because it is very important to be specific in your language. And when you make far-reaching, glaring overgeneralizations, that weakens your point, and it can often make it seem like you don't know what you're talking about, even if what you have to say in that point is legitimate, or like even in the first Twitter fingers we did, there was validity to some of the points that were being made.
Yeah,
it's not like it was pure nonsense. It's not like it was pure garbage. It's just that the way it was communicated was not effective and it wasn't clear. So that's number one. If you're in a position, especially a position of knowledge, and you have to be very careful about how you conduct yourselves on this platform. And this is also not me saying that any of the hateful, like violent messages he got in response were warranted, but any valid criticism is definitely warranted. And I think doubling down, which what was done in response to some tweets, doubling down on this as if there was like ignoring the problem in your tweet and just focusing on, like, I guess what the content or the image of the content that you have in your head is kind of goofy. So that's my overall general opinion before we even dive into like what any of that actually meant. That's just like off rip before we dive into what any of that actually meant. So now diving into the content of the tweet. Okay.
There's so much there is so much to unpack.
There is so much to unpack.
There's a lot of ideas floating around there. If I may jump in, just like like when I hear that, first of all, so my knee-jerk reaction is I play devil's advocate a lot. I'm kind of anarchistic in my nature. So okay. I like to think like, I like to be different. Like I try to be edgy. You know what I'm saying? So like, oh, maybe, so in a sense, right? Like there is a possibility in my mind that what he's saying could make sense, but even if it's what I think he's saying, he could have phrased it way better, which is one of the problems, again, with this platform of Twitter that people use, especially scholars using it. I understand that scholars are using Twitter to connect with you.
Hold on. Before you go on, and this has like been a recurring issue of mine that I've had with this person specifically. And the reason I have this issue, and again, we mentioned it in the first Twitter Fingers video. When you are on the internet and you put an idea into the world, if you are not very specific about what you are saying, once that's out, it is no longer up to you, like how that thing is perceived or understood. Now, obviously, there's like leeway with like there's like a scale of reasonability and how
levels to this.
Yeah, there's like a scale of reasonability of like a reaction to your tweet, right? I'm not denying that exists, but the difference between someone who, and one thing my wife says is like there are other scholars that like joke with you and joke in person and stuff like that. They joke around. And you don't have to be like super serious all the time to be religious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but the difference is if that person is in front of me and they're joking around and they say a joke and I don't like that joke, and maybe I misinterpreted it or whatever, it's fine, and I don't like that joke and I bring it up in that moment, they have the ability to be like, I'm sorry you took it that way. I'm sorry this. What I meant was this. I wasn't trying to offend, and if you want to have a further conversation about this, we can do that. With Twitter, there are so many people reacting to your post that even if you do that with one person, even if you do that with two people, even if you do that with three, if you leave your phone for an hour and walk away, there's no way you can get back to all this stuff. Especially when especially when you've put out such an inflammatory post to begin with.
Yeah. And
You know?
I understand they're trying to
it's
use
irresponsible.
Twitter. They're trying to use Twitter, I think, because that's where the youth are. There's a chance to, guide youth, let's go where they're at to get the Islamic knowledge to them. But to be quite frankly honest, I think like everyone else, these scholars are dealing with social media addiction. And I think there's an aspect of them feeling like celebrities and feeling the need to put out content. And what that creates is you feeling like your opinion matters more than it does. And it kind of makes you feel like there's a halo over your head. And you can just say stuff and it's like, this is just facts. And it's like, again, you're not a celebrity. Even if you're a scholar celebrity, you might be one, but you're a scholar first. You know, at least that's what I personally believe.
At least, and that's what most people perceive as well.
Yeah, and I think if you're wearing like the turban that everyone in the world knows it's a religious turban, it's a symbol, right? It is irresponsible, to not be wary of what you're saying and to like shoot opinions like you're just some other guy on Twitter
and shooting straight from the hip and making broad generalizations.
But let's get more into the content of the actual tweet.
Yeah. So,
do you have it in front of you still?
No. But I mean, I have it on my phone.
It'll be good to keep referencing it.
Yeah. So, many women today are in perpetual conflict with men in their lives because they've been taught to be like men, dominant, aggressive, and in charge.
Pause.
So, what's the first problem with that?
Many women.
Oh, before we get into this, I do want to say a lot of this is like, a lot of tweets like this are a response to liberalism, like in response to ideas that liberalism pushes forward, especially in the society that we live today. And again, if you're trying to talk to youth, I can understand the rationale of being on a specific platform and maybe trying to combat some of these ideas to do that. I think this is probably one of the worst ways to do it. One of the worst ways to do it. So that's just like an aside. But go on.
Perpetual. Read the first sentence again, please.
Many women today are in perpetual conflict with the men in their lives because they've been taught to be like men, dominant, aggressive, and in charge.
Dominant, aggressive, and in charge. I have an issue saying that is what a man is, because that's what it kind of like it sounds. Because like a dominant, aggressive, and in charge.
Before we even get to that, he said many women. What does many mean?
A lot, large.
A lot, probably maybe in my head, the majority at least. Even if 51% many is like something that afflicts the majority. In my head, that's what.
Or at least a sizable population.
Or at least
20%,
20%, sizable population.
A good amount of women, right? And that right there is like, I mean, that was the first thing I said. Like, many.
Now to say that many, whatever that means in this context, many women are in perpetual conflict with the men in their life because they've been taught to be like men, aggressive, dominant, and in charge. Just completely absolves all those men who are in conflict with those many women that are also hot messes and are also abusive.
Because the guys who think being a man is being dominant, aggressive, and in charge.
Exactly. And they think that's all there is to it.
That in fact triggers me because, this is going to be cringy, but like for me, we talked about this before on the channel. I'm a big fan of topics of masculinity. Like I think it's very interesting to talk about like what makes a man, what is masculine, how should men act. It's something I've been studying as a kid because I felt like growing up in this society doesn't give you a proper, holistic, masculine blueprint for young men. So I get triggered when I hear that because to me that's not part of the masculine blueprint. Like what you're saying is woman. At least when I hear that, what my brain hears is women are in conflict with men because they're acting like men, which is causing the problem.
Instead of
if anyone is acting in a relationship overly aggressive, overly assertive, and like they're in charge without any given authority, there's always an issue. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman.
Yeah.
You're talking like what is this notion that just men should just be aggressive and in charge? Aggression is meant for one thing, protection. Like someone's trying to fight you, you're aggressive. Is that something only men should have? No, if a woman gets attacked, she's supposed to be aggressive as well.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not saying
If
aggression
if
isn't a masculine trait,
Mhm.
but why are we acting like it's only a thing
It's
men
only
feel?
only men can have it, or only women can have
If
it.
a woman defends her family, is she being masculine and in charge?
That's what.
Why are you being masculine in charge?
You should just
So
let-
you
should
be
just let
docile.
Exactly.
Give her, and then this leads into like white supremacy, high key. Like what I mean by white supremacy is like the notions that we have about masculinity and authority. Is this? It's I'm better. I have more physical power than you. Therefore, I am
I'm
better.
greater than
Therefore,
you.
submit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not Islamic.
Mm-hmm. SubhanAllah. Yeah. I think I think you said it well. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, this is not something that's one or the other. This is not black and white.
It's not binary.
These traits, it's not binary. These traits are not something that like all men should have all of this and no women should have any of that. And it's pure nonsense. Like you said, if there is a woman being with her children being attacked, she should be aggressive.
She should be dominant.
She should be.
If you're a single mother and you have no man in the house, shouldn't you be dominant?
But even if there is a man in the house,
I know,
say
okay.
the man confronts him first.
Mm-hmm.
Say you get smoked.
Yeah.
Is a woman at that point supposed to be like, "Oh, take my children.
Yeah, please take my children."
Like,
just because you are a man.
like what? Like according to this dichotomy or this framework that's being set up here, she should be like, "Oh yeah, word, you the man, you dominant and in charge, bro. You should, you good."
And even think like
You're more dominant, aggressive, and in charge than my husband. So that means that
and this is a white this
we good.
and this is a subconscious idea that we have that's plagued our society. And some people do think like this. Some women who are victims do think like this, and they're not even aware that they're victims, and they see men like this. It's very problematic.
And I'm sure there are men that a plethora
I
of
think
men
there's plenty of men
that think that
like
way as well.
Andrew Tate followers.
Yeah,
but
if I beat up her boyfriend in front of her, that means I have a right to her.
dominant.
I've won her.
And again, think about what this goes to. This is like, I mean, I'm not. What I'm gonna say next isn't. I shouldn't, because I'm not trying to connect somebody that. Okay, I'll say it, but I'm not. I'll give context.
You're not connecting exactly. Yeah.
What I'm saying is not associated with the person,
Mhm.
but I'm saying this line of this phrasing comes and leads to ideas of like rape culture, of men thinking that they even have authority over women that they have no relation with, that they have no rightful authority over. And let's even think. Let's take this and like let's tone it down. Let's tone down the examples. Let's think like normal circumstance, right? Should a woman just be docile and do whatever her brother says? Imagine like a young female comes to Sheikh and says, "Sheikh, my brother is like abusive, like just verbally abusive to me. He's always bossing me around." This is very common in Middle Eastern households where the son takes the role of the father, and he's the king, and also maybe he's been like a victim of some abuse from his father. That is how he's internalized what authority is. He takes that out on his younger siblings, who he's actually shielded from the abuse, but he's now giving them what's been given to him. So imagine like a young Muslim woman, or even like his younger brother, like, and they go to the sheikh and saying, "Yeah, my older brother's abusive to me. Why are you?" And the sheikh says, "Why are you trying to be like the man? Why are you trying to be dominant and authority and aggressive? Yeah, if your brother just says stuff to you, just listen. Just he's your brother. He's like your father." You see what I'm saying? There's so many issues with this.
Bottom line, I think, is that in the face of tyranny, in the face of oppression, in the face of physical harm, this is not a masculine or feminine issue. Everyone should be aggressive and trying to assert their dominance against that.
It is all hands on deck.
It is all hands on deck, and we have Ahlul Bayt examples of this being done.
Imagine if Lady Zainab was not aggressive and dominant in front of Yazid.
Exactly.
Imagine where Islam would be. We would not have Shia Islam. Imam Hussein has like all the Shaheed of like all that matters, but at the end of the day, who like what was the last strike that killed Yazid? Like metaphorically, what was the last strike that saved Islam? Was it not Lady Zainab? Imagine if she was docile, right? She was literally dominant and assertive and aggressive in her own way. She couldn't throw hands. Literally, she used her words as weapons.
Yeah.
So again,
and she literally asserted like she asserted. If you read the sermon, or also the same thing with Hazrat Fatima with Fedek. Like if you read these sermons, they're asserting their like spiritual dominance, spiritual intellectual. They're asserting their spiritual favor. Like, I come from this lineage.
Showing I'm better.
Yeah. I come from this, And I'm from the greatest creation ever.
And this is completely opposing the culture of the time.
Especially
women
the
were
culture
literally seen as property or worthless.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Either I'm going to bury my daughter or women are just to take as you please. We can move on to the next sentence. But I just hope that shows that was bad. As a take.
Yeah. It was bad. And even if I'm not saying that this person is intending this. But what I'm saying is that they were so vague and unspecific in their language that this could be something that someone takes away from this message.
And again, this isn't just even if I said this, Hussein would roast me. Hussein always roasts me on Twitter, right? Like rightfully so. Like your brother should check you.
Yeah.
If anyone said this, it would be kind of silly and dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Especially someone who's a leader and a role model.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah. So next part of the tweet, it says, the reality is that these traits don't work well as a wife.
Pause right there. What?
I
ask again, what, bro? This is weird because it puts it in the context of male to female relationship.
Mm-hmm.
These traits don't work well as a wife. Bro, everything is circumstance to circumstance based.
Everything is contextual, yeah.
Everything has a context, and I understand there's not enough words that Twitter allows you to give context, but you could have phrased all this differently. This is why I think you're earlier calling this inflammatory.
Yeah.
Because especially in circumstances of a wife, again, let's be real for a second here. I know as Muslims we spend a lot of our energy talking about how Islam is peaceful, and we spend our time fighting against stereotypes because we are victims of Islamophobia. But the reality of the matter is there is so much sexism in our Muslim communities. There is a lot of women being abused.
Yeah.
There's a lot of married women who their husbands are straight up abusive, bro.
And then when they respond back and they're protecting themselves, that's when it's like, oh, you should be submissive. You shouldn't be dominant and like me.
Yeah. Why be like me, bro?
Exactly.
And again, this tweet
And so again, I just want to be clear. The same way I said that in the face of tyranny and oppression, everyone should be like aggressive and everyone should be dominant and rejecting that. The same thing in this tweet. A man or a woman, you should not be aggressive or asserting your dominance over your family.
Yeah, like what is me asserting?
Like, are you supposed to make your kids scared of you? Like
and a lot of people, again, going back.
Do you want to make your wife scared of you? And again, in certain contexts, yeah, there are times when maybe your wife should be in charge. Maybe she knows a lot better than you.
Yeah, and I give an example of this, and this even goes with the old school mentality, right? Like it's very common for the man to be the breadwinner and the woman to handle all the finances. Mm-hmm. So she's assertive and dominant with finances.
Yeah,
and
she's in charge. Money. She's in charge with the finances.
Yeah. So again, it's like, yeah, it's really bad. It's bad, dude.
It's really bad.
It's really bad. Was this deleted?
Really bad. So the tweet on Twitter was deleted. It's still on Instagram. Anyways, yeah. So it's just the implications and like the potential takeaways from this tweet and the generality of it is super duper problematic. And that's my main issue. Again, the last line of this, it says, as a wife, it's your femininity that's gold. It's Allah's gift to you. This is true.
By itself, in a vacuum.
In a vacuum.
If you just tweeted, yeah, femininity is gold, cherish it.
It's Allah's gift to you or something. Like
that's great.
This is actually true, and there are plenty of ahadith to like confirm this.
But you just now use all of this other garbage to say be feminine. So I ask you, in this context, if we're talking to someone, right, what would they take away your opinion about what being feminine is? submissive,
yeah.
uh,
Obeys,
obedient, docile.
yeah.
Submissive, obedient, docile.
Yeah.
And this is, as Muslims, I think one of the things we cherish about, when I say Muslim woman, I mean like what Islam's ideal for the gender.
Mm-hmm.
Not like what I see in Iran or Iraq or
yeah.
This is something I think as Muslim men, we should, and I think we do, some of us at least, like cherish this in Muslim woman.
Mm.
You know, like Islam, like
Cherish what exactly?
Like you see in Muslim women that there's like this femininity, that they're not just docile and weak in society and just do whatever people say. Like you see like a Muslim woman with hijab, like some strict hijab, like just that. Like she might be a bad person, whatever. Like I'm saying, you don't know her though. You just see her hijab. You gotta think like, mashallah.
Yeah. She's
not swayed. She has a whole society telling her to do the opposite, and she don't care.
And then what is? I'm just confused. Like what would be this person's response? And I know he knows about this, but Hazrat Khadija was a very successful businesswoman, was in charge of plenty of men, and she was in charge of plenty of men. Again, like to your point, in a time where it was even more taboo to be that way.
I'm really curious to know what his response would be.
I'm just like, I'm at a loss. Like I'm literally at a loss.
And this is so I have a theory, and again, this is part of the reason we're not saying this guy's name. And like, I just want to clarify, you probably know who we're talking about, but we're not saying his name because we're not clout chasing. We're trying to have a conversation about this, right? And just to dissect what's happening. But you know, I think our scholars are no different than us, and in terms of what they struggle with. I think social media addiction is a real thing, and the issue with people. So I have social media addiction, like to an extent. I think we all do to varying degrees, right?
Yeah, probably.
I spend like an hour on my phone collectively on like just social media, consuming content, unaware of how it has an impact on me subconsciously. Everyone else is doing the same thing. But the difference between some people and others is that some people are also making content while consuming content. And the content you consume will show in the content you make. So if you're being recommended a bunch of Andrew Tate videos and Red Pill videos, and then you're on one that day, you know, that you're just in a mood, and maybe you just didn't think something through, and you have a take, the Red Pill garbage you're consuming is going to influence the take.
Or maybe you're seeing like hyper liberal, the opposite, like you're seeing hyper liberal, you know, things in your feed. Again, in response to that,
and it creates a warped perception of reality. Like that's probably a better example. Maybe his followers, he sees like a lot of hyper liberal youth, lots of feminists, for example, saying things on the opposite side of the spectrum of women not wanting to get married because they don't want to listen to a man and all this kind of garbage, right? Yeah. Maybe he's seeing all that. And he's like getting triggered, like, be feminine. You know, like it's a difficult thing. Like I'm not saying like it's an easy thing to deal with, but you know, there are better ways to deal with it. I think that's why people need breaks from social media.
Yeah, I think that's mostly all. I think I got most of that off my chest. I've been thinking a lot about what I want to say for this episode, because yeah, it just really triggered me. And the reality is that in Islam, every right that you have comes with a what's the word?
Responsibility.
I know, but like corresponding responsibility. There we go. Comes with a corresponding responsibility. So yes, as a husband, it is your right to be obeyed. That also means it's your right not to be abusive as well. You know, your responsibility not to be abusive as well, and your wife's right not to be abused. You know, so these things all have back and forths, ebbs and flows, checks and balances. And if you just talk about one aspect of it, a lot of times people only think there is one aspect to it, and they don't think that they have another responsibility to fulfill before that is that right. They're even obligated to that right necessarily. So it's just, and like I said, like it's a mess. It's a mess, and many women are in conflict with the men in their life because of this, rather than many men potentially being. I think it's probably actually far more likely, given that men are usually, generally speaking, more physically dominant. A lot of times, especially in like Middle Eastern cultures, they are expecting a certain amount of respect or deference being given to them. I think it's probably even more likely to say that many women are in perpetual conflict with men because the men in their life are wilding out, rather than because the women want to be like men. You know?
Yeah, and to give benefit of the doubt, because I did spend the entire time basically roasting the tweet. If this was phrased a lot, and I mean a lot by a lot, if this was phrased a lot differently, there could be a point salvaged. See, and the salvaged point could be that, yes, a lot of women in our society don't cherish their femininity because capitalism, or like this system we have here,
and liberalism,
is purely it's I guess a misled, diverted, twisted version of masculinity that has no room for femininity. You know, like society, just everything's about producing value, and the only way we measure value is by money, which means everyone needs to be working. Like the things that women used to do forever aren't like cooking in the home, taking care of kids, raising family. No one cares.
There's no monetary value. There's no
money in
that.
that.
Yeah.
You can buy food, you can pay for someone to take care of your kids, so you should be working like a man. You know, and you know, like if he was saying, but again, like if he wanted to say that point, there's a lot of ways he could have said it. He could have said, cherish your femininity. Don't let I guess liberal extremists make you feel like femininity isn't valuable.
Yeah.
You know,
like there are Islamic ideals for what a man should kind of I guess display when they're out, and then what a woman should display when they're out. Like that's true. Like all this stuff is true.
But man, of the context he said it in.
I just wish that there had been a more careful, because I think there was a point to be made. I'm sure there was a point to be made.
He missed the point. He missed the opportunity.
Yeah,
man.
I'm sure there was a point to be made, but it was squandered
hard, man. Fumble the bag, and you know, I guess to close it out, I like have nothing personal against the scholar.
Yeah, absolutely not. I don't even know him.
Like, from what I've seen, he posts hilarious stuff on Twitter, and like he spit facts occasionally.
I mean, I think. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
You like this isn't like a personal anything against someone. And I just hope if he's watching this, you know, like I've nothing against you. But like, you're gonna talk about someone publicly, like we're gonna talk about it publicly. Like this is the internet.
Yeah.
But inshallah, like our points are taken. Like, and if we're wrong, let us know. Like, I want to know your opinion in the comment section down below. But I'm not gonna like to see. The thing is, some people are just gonna get triggered because some people are always like respect scholars no matter what. And I don't think, like, at least to me, dude, respect is not void of lack of critique. I like, unless someone is masumin, I don't think you should just be able to like not say anything whatsoever about somebody. Yeah. Just because of the fact that you respect them. You know, I think we're trying our best to like give a respectful critique, especially because we're not saying who this person is. But yeah. No.
Also, there is respect is commanded based on action. You don't just get respect. Like you're not just given respect because of anything, like XYZ, right? Yes, maybe there's like an argument for being like cordial, right? Or like polite. Like you don't want to ruin your akhlaq based on someone else's ugly acting. But you also don't have to, and again, like you said, critiquing is not even necessarily disrespectful. I think we've been pretty respectful. We just think the tweet was bad and he was wrong. I mean, that's it. I don't think there's anything inherent. We haven't dissed him personally. I haven't like none of us have said anything about his family. Like none of that.
Again, like literally no malice.
Exactly.
None that's necessary. Like, and again, someone can have one bad take, and Lord knows I've had way more bad takes, but the only difference between me and him is I said it was just me and Hussein and my friends around instead of tweeting it.
Yeah.
And there's not a spotlight on me.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe in the future, inshallah not, but maybe in the future spotlight gets on us and one of our bad takes get leaked.
Yeah. Also,
you know?
I just want to say, like, again, I said this in the beginning. I want to say it again, just in case he's watching or whatever, or anyone listening. I'm not excusing the wild and violent and, you know,
So there've been threats?
crazy responses to him about this tweet.
There's
right?
been threats to him?
I don't know if there's. I saw some pretty like
That's wild.
pretty extreme, you know, responses,
Okay.
right?
That's sad to hear.
So I'm not saying that those are valid, those are reasonable. But what I am saying is that when you are as unclear and as unclear in general as that tweet was, you invite those things to you. That's the reality. You invite those things to you. And so even people who are defending him, when you defend him, instead of focusing on other people's reactions, focus on what he could have or should have done better, because he, at the end of the day, and he knows this, he can't control how people respond to him. He can only control what he puts out into the world. You know, like, you are not owed a specific reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people in their defense of him maximize the nastiness that he received and minimize the danger of the tweet, that's equally as dangerous. Maybe in different ways, but it's equally as dangerous. That's all I got. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Thoughtful Banter.
I had to ponder. I like what you said.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to say besides clarifying the fact that it's nothing personal.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing against his brother. May Allah reward him for any good work he does.
Absolutely, and I think he's done a lot of good work, and I think his speeches and lectures are very well known across the internet.
I actually listened to a couple that were fire.
Yeah. Again,
everyone has a bad take, dude. we're just going to talk about everyone's bad take.
We just have bad takes, and most people have bad takes in private.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So, I mean, without any further ado, this was this episode of Twitter Fingers. I like this series. Like, Twitter Finger, we're reacting to tweets.
Yeah.
It's a series now. Twitter Fingers. Shout out to the patrons. May Allah reward them. They keep the lights on in Thoughtful Banter Metaphorical Studio that we don't have, but we will have, inshallah. We get more patrons. So if you want to support the podcast, check out our Patreon. But if you don't want to check out our Patreon, it's okay. We would love to have some ratings on Apple Podcasts, especially. Apple ratings go a long way there. So, and we're on all streaming platforms. If you're on Apple Podcasts right now, give us a 5 stars. Write something nice about us. Or don't. Let us know we're awful. You know, let us know we have a bad take. And we'll see you guys next time, inshallah.
Yes, sir.